Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trudge Report, where we talk about our experiences in recovery, better living, trending topics, sports, and a good bit of nonsense. My name is Shawn, and I am your host. I am joined by my good friends and fellow Trudgers, Bill, Corey, and Greg. You can check out new episodes of Trudge Report every Tuesday. Listen on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts, and you can also watch our episodes on YouTube. Please make sure to like and subscribe on all social media platforms with the handle @TrudgeReportPod. Again, that is @TrudgeReportPod. We are presented, as always, by Stella Mix Podcast Management and our wonderful producer and editor, Miss Janine Stella. Good evening, gentlemen. Happy Friday. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great.
Pretty good.
Good. Corey, how's the cat situation, Corey?
I got rid of the cats. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Good to be here again. We are shooting this on Friday, February 23rd. Everybody's in their respective undisclosed locations. Happy to be here. Anybody want to say anything to get us started? How was your weeks? Anything pressing? Any big plans for the weekend? Any crazy events that happened? Any mea culpas, apologies, etc.? Anybody can go first.
Well, I'll spark it off, Shawn. I guess this is my honesty portion of the segment we'll do weekly here. First of all, I'll start by saying I was fact-checking myself. Corey was correct. I did not have a Stanley last week. I'm sorry to let everyone down. I had a knockoff. But due to our great energy in speaking about Stanley Cups, the next day I got an Amazon notification that my wife had ordered the real deal, boys. And let me tell you something. This can't be replicated. I don't want to get back into the whole spiel, but man, am I hydrated. I feel good. I'm glad to be here. And another side note, no MySpace page. Mark is still full of shit, in case you were wondering.
Yes, he finally admitted that to me as well, as I'm sure he did to you.
Yep.
Corey, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Bill, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Ooh.
Consumerism at its finest.
Cheers. That's
Salute.
what's new with me this week. One of our listeners sent me this nice new Stanley Cup because she really liked the conversation.
Are you allowed to shout her out, or no? Is that not appropriate?
I am. She is my sister, actually. So
Shout out Corey's sister, and I'll send you my address as well.
yeah. Oh, also, actually, let me put this on display real quick. She also sent me straw toppers. I don't know if you can see that. That is Darth Vader. Okay.
Nice.
You see that? Yeah.
Solid.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
Your sister's way cooler than you, I think.
I've been told that before. I mean, yeah.
So, Greg, do you have a Stanley Cup as well?
I do. Yeah, we confirmed this last week. I've had this longer than the other two lovely gentlemen have. So, yeah.
I don't know if I can continue with you guys after all that.
Corey and I are bandwagon Stanley guys.
Yes, correct.
You're
Correct.
not OGs.
Honestly, I did this for my ego. Well, my sister was like, "I'll send you one," and I was like, please do, because I want to look better than I am.
This is mine, guys. It's got a filter in it.
Well, that's one thing I don't have.
I love it. It fits in my cup holders in my car. That is important to me. If I have a drinking device that does not fit in my cup holders, that is a huge, huge deal to me. My phone's got to go in one. I have everything in its place, and it has to fit. So
I haven't done that test yet.
Well, I have to go, I have to go into the store and be like, hey, can I take this to my car real quick and make sure it fits before I come back and purchase it? And most of the time they look at me and they're like, absolutely not. And I'm like, hey, you can come out with me. It's fine. And they still usually don't let me do it.
I wouldn't either.
Actually, I just keep the receipt and return it if I need to. But
that sounds a lot like the time when I was like strung out and homeless, and I asked a lot of people to let me borrow their cell phone. And one hit
most
eventually.
Most of them said no.
But a lot said no.
Eventually a lot said no. Do.
Yeah.
But somebody did. Somebody said yes. And he was like, you can have your privacy. You can go over there. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
He got it back.
Adios.
Greg, how are you? How are you doing, brother? How's everything on your end?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Little bit of a stressful week here in the Phillips family household. We had to put down our 17-year-old cat this week.
Dang.
So R.I.P. Naya Papaya. Lived a good long life, and it was cool, man. Like, they came to the house and did it, so it was very chill, very painless. Just, so that was a rough way to spend the middle of the week, anyways. But we're bouncing back. I'm glad to be here. Happy to be on the show. In the interest of both posterity and also just fact checking and delivering all of our listeners the utmost in truth. It was brought to my attention over the weekend, or over the last week when the podcast did air, that Stanley has been around a long time. So I did a little fact checking. They have been around since 1913, and
Wow.
they did not get popular solely because of the car fire incident. Now, the car fire incident is cool because not only did the cup survive the car fire, but I guess it still had ice inside of it. So that's kind of
And the person survived, right?
well, yes, the person survived.
Okay.
More importantly, yes.
Good.
So, but so did the cup. So,
That's good.
also, fun fact that popped up this week in the news. So, a company called Cam Soda, to capitalize off of the Stanley Cup craze, has introduced the Sexy Sipper. And this is not only a Stanley Cup, I shouldn't say Stanley Cup. It is a cup similar to a Stanley Cup, but this is also a fun adult toy, apparently, that comes with a satiating straw and also an inviting insulator, as marketed by their website. We have no reviews on this yet, and again, in the interest of bringing you the most up-to-date information, we will not release any reviews on it until members of our diligent staff here have had the opportunity to try it out themselves. So we'll get back to you on that.
I can say, Greg, I won't be the one testing that, but
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm interested to know where you found that. And also, I'd like to give a shout out to Shawn's new background. I mean, that with the impeccable coat one sees on the well-to-do, fantastic. Shawn, you're glowing over there. Love you,
It's a
buddy.
nice ball you got there.
Making me blush. It took some ingenuity to get this going. I think I bought it a little too large. I was thinking, I'm not sure if it's going to be large enough, and sure enough, it was way too big. But I got it figured out. So
I
Looking
thought you
good.
were in
Gotta figure it
Epcot
out.
for a minute.
I love Epcot.
It's like the new that sphere thing in Las Vegas that we might have to have a segment on that because I don't fully understand what that's all about. Is it real? Is it not real? Is it the Matrix? Like,
It is real.
I have no idea. Are we sure?
It's real, yeah.
Have we been there? Has anybody been there?
I have
Can we
family
verify
friends
that?
I have family friends that went and saw you two there.
I'm gonna say YouTube's been there.
So that specifically, every time they show it on any type of TV program, like I think it was on the Grammys or whatever was recently, and then the Super Bowl stuff, it's all like virtual. Like they like,
Yes.
but it's
It's a lot of
but
light
it's real.
bulbs.
But it's
Correct.
real. So they have a very
We
large
ju-
power bill.
We just
Yeah.
missed it on the bachelor party. It had to open right after that.
We did, yeah. That's a
It's
story
another story for another time.
Epic. Guys, we need to have a very serious discussion. I think this is something that it's one of those things that's going on in our culture right now that just needs, like, the trend is way ahead of society, and we need to have a discussion, get this out in the open, let the listeners know what's going on, give our takes and our ideas on it, and really start to inform people, because if we don't inform people, who will? And that is on the state of tipping in America. Yes, tipping, like going to a restaurant, tipping your waiter or waitress. It's a big deal. So I'm gonna throw out a few thoughts real quick, just to kind of get this going. I've done some research on it. I've listened to some other shows about this and some other information. And I want to have a conversation. We'll go around. Everybody can kind of give their thoughts. And then I kind of want to, at the end, go and like we can all say, and you can, Corey, if you want to be Sweden and abstain and stay neutral, fine. I don't recommend that. But then I want to kind of go around and be like, hey, this is what we tip for in this scenario or that scenario and stuff like that. So one of the things that is brand new or in the last few years, and a lot of this was spawned through the COVID pandemic and probably a little bit even prior to that, like it was coming, but the COVID pandemic really brought this stuff out. And this is like, you know, these automated systems. The Toast system is one of them, a name brand. There's a few other ones that are out there. The card wallet thing, I'm not even sure what the heck it's. Square, not card, but the Square. Like, I'm going to places where I am getting minimal human interaction, getting the service or product that I've paid for. I'm still paying for it. I'm not getting a discount. And then I'm being asked for like a 15, 20, or 25% tip with little to no human interaction. So let's just get it started right there. Let's go around. I'm going to kick it over to Greg first. Greg, give me some thoughts, some ideas, maybe some experiences that you've encountered recently on this tipping thing.
Thank you, Shawn. So yeah, full disclaimer, like my hot take, I guess, on this particular topic. I mean, I spent over 15 years in the restaurant business. So I may be a little biased there, but I should also like preface this whole thing by saying like tipping in America should not be a hot take at all, but yet here we are, right? So according to a survey that was published by Bankrate last summer, only 35% of Gen Z diners report that they always tip their server at a sit-down restaurant. That's compared to 88% of the boomer generation, right? 35%. Now, you know, I get like, you know, we've been talking about in more progressive cities adopting a European style, similar to what they do over there. Obviously, inflation has been steadily just going further and further through the roof. And, you know, kind of like tipping fatigue, like you were just describing, Shawn, where, you know, you're being asked to literally tip almost everywhere you go. All that being said, if you go out to eat in this day and age and sit down in an establishment and don't tip your server, your cheap ass should stick to McDonald's and leave the more refined area of dining to those of us who actually have some etiquette. It's been 3 decades, so longer than Corey's been alive, since the last time they raised the federal minimum wage. So these servers, most of them, are still making like $2.13 an hour, plus whatever they pull in tips based on the generosity of other people, right? So no matter what's going on in their lives and whatnot, they got to show up to work every day, day in and day out, put a smile on their face, and come out and deal with, and I say this from experience, some of the worst human behavior on display. People get to the table, they're already pissed because they had to wait an extra 7 minutes out front before being sat. You know, they got their crying babies with them. They got their toddlers throwing food on the floor, trying to eat the complimentary crayons. Your 10-year-old that keeps picking his nose and wiping his boogers on the other underside of the table, you know, having to deal with your candy ass who still doesn't seem to know how he wants his steak cooked, even though he's done it countless times before, and then he sends it back to the kitchen when it comes out perfectly cooked as he ordered it. Or maybe your significant other who is constantly running the server ragged for extra sides of ranch and some napkins, you know. So I get it, that's what they signed up for, but you know, all of that for what? So that you can leave $3 on a $97 bill? I mean, like, that's just absolutely pathetic. Or even more insulting, nothing. So yeah, I'm going to leave it to you guys, I guess, to discuss some of the other things, because, you know, obviously the restaurant business is where I have my experience, and I still have a lot of people that work in those fields that are very near and dear to my heart. But, you know, for me personally, I'm never leaving anything less than $5. And most of the time I'm over tipping, you know, because I've worked in that field before. So they're getting anywhere from like 25 to 50% if I've had a good dinner or lunch or whatever it may be. But I'd be straight up embarrassed to leave anything less than 18%. And if you're out to eat with me and you pull that kind of bullshit where you're just not going to tip or you're going to leave a couple bucks, I'm gonna make sure you feel embarrassed too. So that's what I got. Thanks.
And we got a few friends that we've called out before. I want to say before, I'm going to kick it to Corey next, but I also spent the majority of my life up until about 2.5 years ago in the food service industry and food and beverage. My wife is still in it. Most of her income is typical income. And I'll get to some of my thoughts and takes on it first. But good stuff, Greg. Thank you for that. Corey, ball is in your court, sir.
Greg, you're really good at this stuff. I feel like every time we give Greg the lead on something, he's just knocking it out of the park.
You should just prepare better, Corey.
I will not. I will not. Greg, so are you saying that you're leaving minimum $5 no matter what?
That is
everything.
Yeah. Well, not for everything, but if the four of us go out to eat
at a restaurant,
at a restaurant,
okay, human interaction,
and I got, my bill is $10. I got a sandwich and a water. I'm still going to leave $5. I find me leaving $2 is insulting.
Well, try eating for $10 these days, first off, but
true.
I agree. I think, number one, I guess what I could say is anytime there's a little bit of human interaction, I think you should tip, regardless of what it is. I mean, and Shawn and I will admit, had a little bit of pre-discussion on this because we were at a restaurant at one point.
I pitched this idea to him on Tuesday.
Yeah. But there's so many things. So, okay, I'll say this. I worked, as you guys may know, I worked at a bowling alley for a couple of years. One of the managers, and oddly enough, I learned when I got that job that the front desk people could receive tips, either cash or card, right? Yes. Yeah, it was cash or card. A tip could be written on the receipt, just like at a restaurant. For the front desk guys, who they're making minimum wage, but they're not making tipped minimum wage. I do remember a lot of comments being like, "Wow, you guys get tips," and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I didn't know either until I started working here." One time, he's gonna love that I say this, but one time my good friend Corey, who we worked together there, we were both managers and we were both on the same shift, absolutely smoked me that shift in tips. He got literally tipped $120 that night. I got $5. He gave me a 20 to make me feel better. It was ridiculous. I guess I'm not that personable. What do you guys think? I don't know.
Well,
I agree.
Knowing both
I'd
of you,
tip you.
Yeah.
You tip him more is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I'd pity tip you. I'd still be like, man, I feel bad for this guy.
Appreciate it.
He's really aggravated.
Yeah. So anyway,
and he's an Eagles fan.
Yeah. So anyway, so something like that, my point is in that it's even though, they're not, that they're not making the tip to minimum wage or whatever, a couple bucks, anytime you're asked to tip, I think a couple bucks is a good standard at least. And even those guys, the front desk guys at a bowling alley, for anybody's knowledge here, they could very well be providing a service to you. And as lame as it kind of might sound, a pin gets stuck in the gutter or a ball gets stuck in the back. Sometimes they're running in the back to do it because the mechanics are tied up or whatever. So that could happen. Also what is $2-3 in that instance? Obviously I'm not talking about the restaurant industry at this point, but what's $2-3 to me, compared to them who have hopefully gotten $2-3 from many customers in the day. You know what I mean? So to add to that, makes more of a difference for them than it does to me. And then to Greg reminded, and you guys know this, but Greg reminded me of something before we started the episode. When we go to concerts, they have their little, I think they're squares. I think the little kiosk squares, right?
Yeah, essentially.
And when you go and buy a poster or a T-shirt or whatever, it asks you if you want to leave a tip. So, like, you know, like we were saying, this person that is working behind the counter, all he has to do is turn around, grab you a poster, turn back around, hand it to you, and then like you roll it up or whatever. I still have always tipped those guys, even a buck. You know, I totally will. Yes. Don't shake your head at me.
Here's the deal, if I may interject there real quick.
Go ahead.
Those guys have just first off, I don't know anybody's personal job besides my own, but I imagine that those dudes, aside from having to deal with thousands of people coming through their line for that event, have a pretty cake job, right? Yes, it's outside during the summer, whatever, but you're getting a free concert as part of your job, right? And
not even free, you're getting paid to go to a concert.
You're getting paid to go to a concert, and then you want me to give you money because you walked from one end of a stand to another end of the stand to grab me a T-shirt? Like,
well, let's also address the fact, and I'm sure somebody's going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up first, that like they're also watching you. It gets so awkward sometimes.
Well, that's where right. That's where part of this conversation needs to be had, and because it's almost like you said it, like I would guilt tip you. Bill said it to Corey. That's almost what it's like. You don't want to be viewed as the bad tipper. You don't want to be looked at. You know, I'll get into it on my. I'll digress for a minute. I'll hit those notes on my end. Bill, you want to go ahead next, or do you want?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Can I just sum it up real quick? Let me sum it up real quick. Restaurant wise, though, like I agree with Greg. Like if you can't afford to tip 25 to 30% at the least, then don't go. And if you ever received a 15% tip from me or my spouse, you were insulting as a server. Like you got to be bad because it is your livelihood, and I think all four of us can agree we care about that. We care about that for other people. We would want good tippers to tip us. So yeah. Good.
Okay.
So for me, first of all, we're talking about tipping culture as a whole, okay? And it's what's happened over the last 10 years that I've seen. It's sleight of hand. So businesses are now transitioning reliability upon pay from themselves to the consumer, okay? I worked at a Jimmy John's. We were not allowed to put a tip jar out because it was of bad taste, okay? You go into Jimmy John's now, you're going to get pressured or an attempt to pressure you if you don't tip these people up front. And to me, that is just the businesses are passing the responsibility on to the consumer who we're already paying top dollar. I mean, what are we talking about here? First of all, I'm tipping 20+% on excellent service. I'm basing my tip off service. I grew up in the restaurant industry as well. And one thing is my family made me to promise to never remain or open a restaurant. If you're in the tipping business, I feel bad for you. I would tell you to get out. However, tipping outside of a restaurant is absolutely ridiculous. And I will stare you down right in your eyes and not tip you because you're not going to pressure me into tipping you because I feel bad for you for nothing. If I'm going to go off that logic, am I tipping my accountant when they do a service? Am I going to tip, anybody that does any service for me? No, I'm not. So to me, it says, Greg was talking about that report, 66% of people, they negatively view tipping culture. I think the other 34% of people are sick in the head. I mean, this tipping culture is out of hand. Tips should be based off performance. For me, exactly. I'm out on it, man. I cannot be pressured. And then you have people that get so mad if you don't tip them for a regular service. It's like, I'm going to not tip you again next time because it to me, it's out of control. And then there's actually kiosks with no one at them now at the airport that want a tip. Next time you go to the vending machine, do you want to give them a tip? For what? I'm not. It's more of another inflation baked on top of inflation, in my opinion. So, hate me, but it is what it is.
So, thank you, Bill. I like has already been said, human interaction is a whole different ball game. being in the restaurant industry most of my life, going out to a restaurant, actually getting service. Bill, you mentioned your bachelor party in Vegas a few years ago. His name was Joe at the Italian restaurant we went to. I remember he was so professional. He was awesome. And he didn't even, it's one of those restaurants, he didn't even run the food. They had food runners. He was so knowledgeable, so professional, so personable, and just had an awesome way about him. And yeah, we were there for a bachelor party and all that stuff, and fine. So he was going to get a big tip probably no matter what. However, I guarantee you he's like that to all his tables that night, and he makes really good money. And there's waiters, professional waiters in the big cities, New York, Chicago, LA, etc., Vegas. I guarantee you they are making six figures a year, right? So there is a personal human element to it. Bill, I love what you said about the unmanned kiosks, or like the places that you're going nowadays, and you are having the bare minimum human interaction, and they're still wanting you to put 20, 25, even 15% down. I'm not with that either. I have my own personal rules when it comes to tipping outside of anything but a sit-down restaurant. I do carry a 10 or 20 single dollar bills on me throughout the week, or at least I try to. I'll throw a buck at, if I go to get coffee and it's, $6.10, they can have the other 90 cents, fine. Or if I'm paid with my credit card, I'll just put a buck in the tip jar, whatever the case may be. I think that we have to differentiate between gratuity versus a service fee, because they are two completely separate things. And I think a lot of things are getting convoluted. Like, hey, is this a service fee? A lot of restaurants nowadays are putting a $1.50, $2.50 service fee added to the end of your bill for whatever, call it whatever, inflation, cost of goods and products going up, which essentially is inflation, but right, call it whatever. When I delivered pizzas 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I got an hourly rate. I hopefully got tipped. And then I got a delivery fee or a service fee. I got like $3 for every delivery I made. And that was kind of like my gas stipend. So I think we have to differentiate between a gratuity and a service fee. If I'm going to the local car wash and it's an automated system, but they have like one or two people there to just make sure like the system doesn't break down or they can fix it, kind of to your point, Corey, about the bowling, like the mechanic and all that. That kiosk asked me if I want a tip. Wait, I'm already paying for the car wash. It's a touchless car wash. The human beings there are not washing my car. Who am I actually tipping? The engineer of the kiosk? Like the person who invented it? Like really and truly,
Right.
What are we doing with that? You know what I mean? And then, there's this idea, restaurants that automatically put a percentage of a tip into the final bill. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's probably brilliant on the restaurant's end, because I know my wife and I, like, we go out to dinner and it'll be like, oh, it's 15, 18%, whatever it is already added in. So we're trying to figure out, and that waiter is always ultimately getting, with that 18% plus whatever we're leaving them, like a very, very good percentage, right? So maybe that's good, maybe that's not. I wouldn't feel comfortable not leaving just something extra, rather, even though it's included in the bill. I just wouldn't feel, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But I think it is, Bill, to your point, that was a great point. It's like, we're getting guilt tripped into it. And we're rewarding essentially people. And let's be honest, a lot of it is like the newer, younger generation, right? The late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. They kind of grew up in that time. Not going to throw any shade their way. It's just the way they grew up. We're rewarding them, or it's kind of, there's a line from a book that says the laborer is worthy of his hire, meaning I'm going to pay you based on your performance and the effort you've actually put in and what you've actually done, not just because you're standing there and looking at me or you are employed by that company. So I don't know. I think we could probably keep going on this, and I know we're going to move on. I want to go around real quick, just take a couple minutes each, not even, and I'm going to go mine, and then you guys will see what I'm talking about, and then I want you guys to go. So if I'm picking up a pizza carry out, you're getting $1 to $2 bills minimum. I'm not tipping on my credit card. I'm just putting it in a buck. Here you go. Thank you. If I go to the golf course, I carry my own bag for the most part. You want to come take 13 seconds and wipe my clubs down with your wet Rag, you're getting $2-3 maximum, maybe $5 if it's a really nice golf course, or or whatever the case may be. My haircut, you're getting a $5 tip. My haircut literally takes 8 minutes. It's not a big deal, right? I have kind of these rules. Like I said, Dunkin' Donuts, I'll give you the spare change that rounds up to that nearest dollar. Or if I paid with my credit card, I'll give you a single dollar bill. I don't mind doing that. Kind of to your point, Corey, what's $2 or $3 extra? What I'm not going to do, though, is give you a tip when you've actually done completely nothing, right? I'll smile and be kind to you, though, because I'm a big believer in that as well. And at restaurants, it's always 20 or more. So let's go back to Greg real quick and just run down your quick list, and we'll keep going.
All right. So, yeah, if I'm going to pick up a pizza, no. If I'm going to a golf course, which is never, no. Okay. So if they drive to my home, yeah, if they drive to my home, absolutely, man. That's wear and tear on their vehicle, gas, all that. Yeah. But I very rarely order delivery to my house. My barber, man, I'm telling you, my barber, though, like, he'll do the beard, he'll do the hot shave. I get a little bit of philosophy and life talk while I'm there. That's a very pleasant experience. The guy is
human interaction.
Right. Tom at Faithfully Faded, shout out to you. And he gets a tip every single time. Okay. Poster people, nah, sorry.
Zero.
Not going to happen.
God.
Okay. Merch people, no.
It's hot.
If I go to a coffee shop or my local butcher shop or something like that, and there's a tip jar on the counter, if you seem like you're into your job, or you don't even have to be super excited about it, but just tell me hello and give me a smile and, seem like you're at least, into it, you're going to get a couple bucks probably. If you're just standing there like a bump on a log, you're not getting anything except to have a nice day. See ya.
There you go. There you go. Corey, quick.
I disagree. I'm usually tipping. I'm usually tipping at least $1. Okay, so one thing I'll say is, so takeout. Like if I go to Flanny's and we're getting takeout, even though they're just handing me the food over the account,
$2.
right? $2. If I'm getting lunch for the whole office and it's like 5 to 6 orders, then I usually do $1 an order, just because I'm not really playing with my money. I'm not going to do $2 an order and make everybody's cheeseburger like 20% more than it's supposed to be or whatever. But so that's like $1 an order. The barber, I completely disagree with. That's minimum $10. However, I get not free haircuts, but I trade baking a rib roast for haircuts now for one of my friends. So that's cool.
So weird.
Checks out.
That is genius, Shawn. I eat a delicious rib roast with a clean shaven head. Anyway, what else is there? I don't know what else there is. But most of the time I'm tipping a couple, even $1. If, like I said, the poster people, they're getting $1. What's $1? What's $1? I don't, and hopefully they're pleasant.
Everybody gets a trophy, apparently.
No.
It's packing into the stream of life, you dicks.
No.
Yeah, but what's $1? 15 times is $15.
This is
Also,
incredible.
Who knows what they do? Maybe they unload the posters off the frickin' truck.
It's
all
paper.
Right, so listen. So
Go ahead, Bill.
what do they get paid
Thank
for?
you, Corey.
I mean, what? I will throw
Right.
shade at the generation. Get off your ass. Don't try to stare me down for a tip. You do that, and I'm going to out alpha you, and you're not getting a tip. And I'm going to make it a point. In fact, this segment's woken me up to the fact that I don't feel right giving a tip when I'm picking up my food. It's not right. What did you do? I should go back there and tip the cook if I like the food. What did
They're
you
the ones
do?
putting it in the package anyways. The cooks are, and handing it to the person.
100%. And this segment's really woken my eyes to the fact that I am not going to be pressured anymore into tipping, and I will update this place. Now, if you're my waiter, yes. Good massage, yes. Haircut, if it's good, shout out Max's Shaving Room, yes. But besides that, you are not
Sounds
getting
like
a
brothel.
tip. I'm going to put my foot down on this, and the kids of this generation need to not get a tip and go cry about it and go scrub the floors, get a menial job. The crappier, the better.
Love it, guys. We will monitor this trend. I have a certain podcast and guy that writes for the Atlantic Journal. that put some articles out. We'll monitor this, and we will circle back to this. So, all right, guys.
Test me, Firehouse subs. Test me. I'm going to come in there. I'm going to stare you in your eye. I'm going to hit 0 right in front of you.
I might call each one of you tonight. I'm pissed.
So speaking of like posters at concerts and stuff like that, we're going to get into some music. We are going to get into some music. And I know for a fact that I'm pretty positive I'm going to fire Corey up even more than he already is, possibly Greg. But we're going to get into some underrated and overrated musical artists. Now, I know this could be super broad. So in our prep meeting yesterday, we kind of just discussed that each one, we're just going to make it broad, right? Maybe we'll narrow it down at some later point, but each one of us is just going to kind of go off the genre or class of music that we kind of like, and we're going to go from there. So let's see. We are going to go with, you know what, Corey, we're going to you first. We're going to kick it to you. Give us your most overrated and underrated musical artists and why.
Okay.
And let's start all of us when we go around. Let's do overrated first.
Overrated first. All right. I thought this was going to be difficult when we discussed it, but it was actually very simple.
It was fun.
And we're talking single musician, right? Or whatever, or like band or whatever.
Whatever you want.
Artist. Okay.
Yeah,
correct.
Because here's the deal. Angus Young from AC/DC is one of the most overrated guitarists out there, possibly ever. He might be at the top. For me, he kind of is. And like, I'm not even hating on AC/DC. They were great. I get that. They're iconic. That's awesome. And they wrote a lot. I mean, just like a lot of bands out there, they wrote a lot of songs that are about 3 chords and maybe a little bluesy solo or whatever. But Angus Young is not some guitar god like people think he is. He's just not. I don't really even have any like supporting data for you. He's just not that great of a guitarist. There are a million guitarists better than him. Just because he is who he is, and that the band is iconic, and that he did have his own, like, you know who Angus Young is when you see him on a TV or something, like, you know that's Angus Young because he's wearing the stupid school uniform that they do or whatever. Great. Like, that part of him makes him special, but his guitar playing, I mean, he's not even, I don't even know if he's top 40. And that's kind of a hot take in a lot of people's eyes. Yeah. I got a lot of good ones before him.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we're gonna go. We're gonna continue around the horn with overrated, and then we'll come back and go again with underrated, just to keep it on the same level. So, Greg, you are next, sir.
Overrated. Kiss all day, and
Good
it's
one.
not even close. It is not even close. These guys, I mean, the music is absolute trash. You listen to songs like, I mean, Rock and Roll All Night. Yeah, everybody knows that it's in like 18 freaking movies.
Yeah.
Who cares? You got Love Gun and Detroit Rock City. They're all very basic. The music is subpar, especially for the time that it was coming out and all the great music that was coming out during that time. They are literally famous and overinflated and overrated simply because they put on a decent stage show where they all wear makeup and Gene Simmons takes his big old tongue out and all the ladies go crazy and somebody bites the head off a bat. I'm sorry, that was Ozzy, but still, you get what I'm saying. These guys, a bunch of freak. I mean, if it wasn't for the makeup, if it wasn't for the costumes, if it wasn't for the spectacle and the stage show, they would be a very forgettable 80s hair band.
Yeah. Love it. Bill, love it. I had that one too in my honorable mentions, Greg. Billy.
You're on mute, Bill.
He did the mute thing.
He's muted.
Bill, you did it.
What I was saying is shout out to Joe at Pietro's, man. I forgot to say that. And I had a lot of fun with this too. And real quick, I'll just go down my honorable mentions. Smashing Pumpkins, stink. Christina Aguilera from Pittsburgh, stinks. Blink 182, trash.
Dude.
Rick Ross, get it out of here. Nick Cannon, don't know how he's famous. Machine Gun Kelly, oh God, he makes me sick.
He's terrible.
J-Lo, overrated.
Oh, man.
Beastie Boys, overrated. Taylor Swift, overrated.
We're not even going to touch that one, Corey. Don't bite, Corey. Don't bite. Go. You know what he's doing.
The Beatles, overrated, very overrated. Grateful Dead, overrated. Most overrated rapper, Jay-Z. And here's my personal pick, Dave Matthews. Overrated.
You know what?
Hold on. I might attend his concert with you guys this year because I love you guys. I asked each one of you, this is why I bring this up, each one of you for your favorite Dave Matthews song. I cleared my heart. I sat down, meditative state. I listened to it, and I'm like, what am I listening to? This is garbage. I'm sorry. I don't like it. I think it's a whole just culture thing. It's like Grateful Dead, but the music stinks. That's my take. Sorry, I love you guys.
You think that you pissed me off with that, and you don't know that you already pissed me off to the max when you said the Beatles.
So then I will say mine because, Corey, mine was the Beatles, and I've already been on record saying this, and I'm going to listen. Their music is just not that good. Like
100%.
I get that they were of the time, the generation, and you know, what's his name was all peace, love, and don't hurt anybody, and that was huge back then. Paul McCartney by himself was probably the best. Like he by himself solo was probably the best. The music, listen. This goes to my Patrick Mahomes take, my LeBron James take. I acknowledge the talent. I acknowledge that, like who they were for that generation is something unbelievable. The music is not that good, right? The music is not that good. And
our producer is pissed at you, Shawn, right now.
That's fine.
Rightfully so.
I just do not think that their music is that good. I would pick so many bands to listen to from that time frame over them. All right, so they experimented with several genres, great, ranging from pop ballads to indie music, psychedelic, hard rock, often incorporating classical elements in innovative ways. But they made generic pop music to appeal to the masses, right? Nothing they ever did was especially experimental or groundbreaking, and yet people hail them as the greatest band ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't see it. Now, what I will say is my argument I just made could be the exact same thing could be said about my beloved Taylor Swift. So it's true. And we've talked about this, guys. Taylor Swift and the Beatles, they were generational. They moved a generation of their time.
Cookie cutter.
People don't think that Taylor Swift's music is all that creative and good. I personally disagree with that take, especially some of the stuff that came out during pandemic. But a lot of it is poppy and it's made for the masses. And then, listen, that sells. So brilliant on them. I just don't think it's not that I don't dislike the Beatles entirely. I would pick a handful of bands and music of that time frame to listen to before I listen to them.
On that note, let's just get a quick check and I'll answer it. Rolling Stones or Beatles? And I'm saying Rolling Stones by a mile.
By a mile. By a mile. Not even close.
Corey?
I truly don't even know who you guys are anymore. This is such bullshit. You're asking me? It's the Beatles. Honestly, the Stones are overrated. Yeah. And I don't even
quite as overrated as the Beatles. I get it. I understand.
Super. Listen, I have to say this. Are we going around or something?
Just go ahead.
Am I interrupting? Okay.
Go.
The Beatles, musically, no, they are not the most talented musicians, technically. Right? Of the four...
That's how I feel.
No. Of the four, Paul McCartney and George Harrison were the most talented musically. However, the songwriting is off the charts. They changed. We wouldn't have Taylor Swift. We wouldn't have anything we have today, really. They changed everything, and there's not another band out there that went through so many transformations in 8 years, 9 years they were together or whatever. Like, at least big. I do not like you guys.
That's good. That was kind of my point. I stand by that take. I've never really thought they were that fantastic musically. Again, I acknowledge what they did for the generation, but the music itself, I'd rather listen to other music. So
The
in that
songwriting's
vein,
off the chart.
okay, sure. In that vein, I'm going to let Corey take a few minutes to calm down and breathe, and we're going to start with Greg for
Not gonna work.
Underrated.
Underrated. Go ahead, Greg.
For underrated, I did have to confer with Corey on this since we are both big fans of one of the greatest bands of all time. But I conceded to him. I might have a couple things to throw in when he does his. So my underrated, it could have gone a few different ways, but I picked Soundgarden. Chris Cornell. First off, they're not inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet, and I don't know why. Chris Cornell, greatest rock singer of his generation, might be the greatest singer of his generation. They helped pioneer grunge music, and for bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam often get a lot more of that credit, but Soundgarden has been like that constant. Every album they put out was a banger. They didn't really have a lull in the 6 albums that they put out. And you can see their influences all over music from back then all the way up to today. Even in bands like Tool, Queens of the Stone Age, all the way to like Miley Cyrus and Chris Stapleton. You can see where not only the band's influence, but certainly like Chris Cornell as a great American songwriter, and obviously like the voice, you can't even replicate his voice and his range and his projection. I mean, the guy was just something special. So that was my pick.
Nice.
All right, thank you, Greg. I had Nirvana and Pearl Jam on my honorable mentions of Overrated, by the way. So,
Whoa.
Jeez.
yeah, I'm not a Cobain fan at all. I think it all sounds the same. Bill, go ahead next. We still got to let Corey move.
Yeah. Corey's still figuring it out, your hot take, which was beautiful, Shawn. I have a list again, man. I had a lot of fun with this. I think Tom Petty is underrated, believe it or not. I know he's a huge artist. Post Malone, huge artist, underrated.
Love Posty, dude.
Love him. Fantastic. I love the guy. I think he's real. I tell you this, Corey was saying we wouldn't have anything we had today without the Beatles. I'm kind of like, I wish we didn't, because there's a lot of music I don't like. I grew up in a music scene, and like, I'm like, today's music, I'm not like, particularly. So I think Justin Timberlake is underrated. And I think that Cameron and Big Pun are the 2 most underrated rappers of all time. If you've never listened to the SDE album by Cameron, fantastic album if you're into rap music. Big Pun, the entire collection is ridiculous. My number 1 underrated artist is Mac Miller. I mean, the guy's only sold, I think, 5 million records. And if you listen to his collection of music, the dude was so talented. He could do it all, play the piano, sing, rap, creativity. The level of energy that he brought to music was unbelievable. And I got the chance to be in the same room with him before. He's from the same side of Pittsburgh as me. And I got to see him grow up from a kid to a worldwide artist. And if you haven't listened to Mac Miller, the Swimming album, watching movies with the sound off, even the Kids album, which is more when he was younger, I mean, the dude was fantastic all the way through his career. And I don't see that a lot. It's like Post Malone. I see a lot of talent, energy, and realness from these people. And I see a lot of cookie cutter crap on the other side. So that's my take.
I like it, Bill. Thoughtful. I like it. Very thoughtful. All right, Corey. Underrated.
You wouldn't have JT without boy bands. You wouldn't have boy bands without the original boy band, the Beatles.
True. That's true. That one's, yeah.
Is that your underrated?
No.
He's talking about Justin Timberlake take.
I'm just pissed still.
Okay.
All right. I got to move on somehow. Are we sure we're doing an episode 4?
We'll find out.
Who's your underrated? We want to know. The people must know, Corey.
All right. I won't waste any more time. Well, obviously, to nobody's surprise, I'm going with Dave Matthews.
I would agree with that.
And like, yeah, you could say the Dave Matthews Band, or I kind of was thinking more so just Dave Matthews as a guitarist. He himself is very like modest about his skill. He is a master riff writer. Even on the new album, and Greg, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree here, but like there's a couple songs on the new album that came out last year, and I'm not even particularly fond of them, to be honest. There's a couple of them that are just a little bit too slow and whatever for my taste with Dave, but they're still good songs. They're all right. But the riffs in them are just like he is a master when it comes to writing a riff for a song. I don't understand it. I agree. We have The Stone is a iconic Dave Matthews riff that Bill has certainly never heard of because it's not mainstream, and that's why it's underrated. Dave Matthews is underrated because he's really not all that mainstream. As big as he is, he's like the Dave Matthews Band is like 4th overall for concert ticket sales ever, like right behind like U2, I think. And even with those facts,
which we can talk about U2 as being overrated, but
true,
100%.
Yes.
Even with those facts that they are that successful, they're still underrated, I think, because they are an acquired taste. Dave Matthews is an acquired taste. Not everybody understands Dave Matthews. Bill, when you go with us, like
we'll teach you, bro.
I prepare myself when we bring somebody new to Dave that they're possibly going to be like, what is this shit? Because it is an experience like no other. And but yeah, man, he is an absolute genius when it comes to writing songs, and his talent is off the charts. Yeah.
I will say this really quick is I'm going to keep an open mind, Corey. I'm going to come to the concert.
Good man.
If you guys see me wearing, if I find the acquired taste, I will wear a Dave Matthews shirt on here. I will buy it at the show, and I will not tip for it.
That's fine.
Yes.
I knew that was coming.
I need to end it here too, because I need any listeners out there to know this fact. They're also underrated because people stop at Crash and Satellite and Trippin' Billies and stuff like that. That is honestly, that's almost not Dave Matthews Band. I've heard Crash into me like twice in my 26 shows. All right. So there is so much more. They're amazing live. Get into the live stuff for anybody out there that wants to.
And Crash, like low key, very, very sexual song.
It's all
a lot of them are.
Like
a lot of them are.
Very much so. When you actually listen to the words,
it's about his wife too. That he.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I will say this just real quick, like as far as Dave goes, because Corey and I, we could all talk about this for an hour, but like I went to my first show in 2000, and I went because all my buddies were going, and they had the weed. Right, I knew 2 songs, and that was it. You know, Soldier Field, Chicago, the year 2000. Since then, at least that I can count, because there was a lot of years and a lot of drugs since then. But I've been to 70 shows, and it is always something different every single time.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely an amazing experience.
Yeah, I go every year with you guys, just once a year, and I look forward to it every single year. And maybe one day we'll play the video clip of me finding joy to my one of my most favorite songs.
Could be a good cold open to this one.
Could be a real stay tuned for that. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna bring my underrated artist band is someone that I don't know if any of you have ever heard of. I may have spoken to you about them in the past, but they're not super mainstream, at least not to my knowledge. And someone turned me on to them years ago, and I love them. But it is the band JJ Grey and Mofro. Okay, JJ Grey and Mofro. They are considered what you would call swamp rock. They are from the swamps of Jacksonville and the surrounding areas. They are they're a bit of blues, funk, soul, rock and roll, a little bit of country, and it again around the Jacksonville swampy area in Florida. Swamp rock. The term Mofro, the band used to just be called Mofro, and that JJ Grey, the lead singer, he kind of felt like that word Mofro kind of embodied the sound of their music. Like if you had to put one word that encompassed the sound of their music. It was Mofro. And then oddly enough, his grandmother, shout out to his grandmother, probably an awesome lady, like basically accused him that he was embarrassed to put his name to the band. So that's when it became JJ Grey and Mofro. Been around since the 90s. Phenomenal. Like they used to play like all the dive bars in West Palm Beach and Lake Worth and just all up and down Florida. Shout out to Butch and Elise. They're the ones that turned me on to them years ago. It is, talk about something that gets you your soul alive and like free. It is JJ Grey and Mofro. So all the listeners out there, to my fellow trudgers here with me, Miss Janine, search them. They are awesome, phenomenal. They got all kinds of stuff. JJ Grey and Mofro. That's my most underrated. So that being said,
love it.
Phenomenal. Yes, phenomenal. So I think we're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit on time. So do any of you want to touch anything more on music, or do we want to, I know we had some other thoughts. Do we want to save it for another time maybe and just keep it going?
Yeah.
Cool. That was great, guys. I enjoyed that. We'll do some power rankings of some musics and some genres and stuff in the later episodes. So we're going to go into our On the Beam segment. This is kind of our spirituality, better living segment, and we will wrap with this segment. And we kind of had some different ideas on what we wanted to do on this week, but really we want to just kind of go around and kind of give our quick little experience and synopsis on like the last little bit of stuff that got us into the rooms of recovery, like the things that were going on in our lives right before it, what took place right at it that helped propel us into this world of recovery, whether it was many failed attempts or just kind of getting caught into it. And you know, say what you guys want. You guys can be as forthcoming as you want. We have a lot more episodes to do, you know, hopefully for a very long time. So a lot of those details can come out. But Bill, we're going to start with you if you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor. So, and I say this message to anybody that's in a dark time in their life, and it doesn't have to really relate to drugs, because the drugs and the alcohol are just a symptom of a lot deeper thing going on that was going on with me, and how dark it is before the dawn. You know, for me, and if you're struggling with anything, maybe it's depression or any of those things, you gotta motivate yourself to change your life. And for me to do that, you know, I was the type of guy, I was in maybe 15 rehabs in a year. I was incredibly afflicted with a heroin appetite that I could not fill, Xanax appetite I could not fill. I spent the last 2 years of my addiction not even able to get high, you know, ever. I mean, I was just not able to. I just put this stuff in myself to just be normal in my mind. And I had to lose every relationship. I thank my uncle who told me, don't call me. You can email me. I'm very close to my uncle. He's like a mentor to me. I lost my father from addiction when I was 9 months old, and I lost both parents.
Shout out Uncle Henry.
Shout out Uncle Henry. I lost both parents due to addiction. So I know all about it. It's affected my entire life. But when he told me that, I lost all my options. When I got kicked out of the halfway houses, you know, I'd go to these halfway houses. I got kicked out of one because I ordered a big box of kratom to the halfway house, and the manager found it, and he's, the hell's wrong with you? And I like a lawyer, I tried to explain these things, like, this is legal. It's not really a substance. You know, I had to stuff myself with these substances, man. And I really had to awaken to a separation from that for a long period of time, before I could really find myself. And, you know, shout out to the people who shut me out of their life. They had the courage to do that. And they said, we were ready to bury you. We just kind of write me an email every 6 months. And if it's negative, I'm not going to read it, Bill. You know, shout out to the rehabs that wouldn't let me in anymore. The psych wards in Pittsburgh, I was not allowed in the psych ward because I left 2 times in a day and kept trying to come back. And this is a place that was disgusting. I mean, you know, and all those situations, man, I was a broken man. I'd experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And whenever I turned that page and decided to do something about it and said, I'm gonna chase this like I chased the drugs, everything in my life changed at that point. So to me, it took a lot of beatdown. It took a lot of beatdown, a lot of courage, and a lot of staying away from the negative people. Water seeks its own level. Conscious decision in my heart. I'm not going to hang around those people. I know what that's going to lead to. If you're struggling with depression or whatever it is, find a support group, find a therapist, find anything you can. Obviously, a recovery community is huge, but if you're going through other things, go to the counseling, go to the therapist groups, find a fellowship of people, like-minded people that want to rise above those things, and don't succumb to it. Don't ever give up, because if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks.
Amen. Thank you, Bill. GA.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Bill said rings true in my story and my experience too. I had to run until the wheels fell off. There was no rehab, and a lot of that stuff was the stuff of TV shows and movies. In my personal experience, I started drinking at the age of 12. Started using some light drugs, I guess you would say, at 13 or 14, and I didn't get sober until I was 32. So a lot of years of numbing the pain, numbing myself, getting outside of myself and outside of my own head. The last couple years, I was hooked on heroin. A little bit before that, I spent a couple years hooked on pain pills until that got too expensive, and so I just did the next logical thing, which was heroin, right? So I never really gave recovery a shot. I remember for the last year and a half or so of every morning waking up and wanting to stop, and wanting to stop this life, wanting to stop putting all my family and my loved ones and my friends through the kind of stuff I was putting them through. But I just couldn't. I would try to detox myself. I would try every home remedy under the sun. I would check myself into charity detoxes, which was all I had the money for. I would last there maybe 3 or 4 days at a time. And as soon as I was out, I could tell myself in my head and rehearse in my head exactly what I was going to do every time. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go to a recovery meeting, and I'm gonna just work, and I'm gonna do all this. And as soon as I left that door and got a cell phone in my hand, it was over. And I couldn't reconcile that in my head, how badly I wanted something and still could not stop. So yeah, right there at the end, man, how I got into my journey into sobriety and recovery and everything was through a failed suicide attempt. I don't say that to glamorize it. It was kind of half-assed, to say the least. And I didn't really know what I was doing. And thankfully I didn't know what I was doing. Right. But yeah, much like Bill was saying, my family was done with me. I learned a couple years later, my mom admitted, she was like, I could have never done that on my own, like shut you out because you're my son, my only son, my firstborn. She's like, but her husband, my stepdad, he had enough. He'd had enough of me stealing, lying, coming home just blitzed, and everything that came along with it. And he finally put his foot down, probably 2 years too late at that point, but it was him that started that whole chain reaction, and the whole family kind of got together as a front and said, we're done with you, so either go get yourself well, or go the other way you're going, and we'll all just prepare for the fact that we're going to get the phone call that you're dead one day, which is exactly where I was going, right? So but I think one of the big things for me in my story, and what I always tell people is, for the first time in my life, I went down to Florida. I changed the scenery. I came down. I went to detox. I went to rehab. I spent, close to 90 days in rehab and an outpatient program before I went to live in a sober living community. And that's when it got worse. And again, just my experience, but out of rehab, out of the nice little bubble of all that, and I go to a sober living community, and I don't do anything except what I've always done, which I'm going to look for a job because I need to pay my rent. I'm going to, scrounge up enough money for Red Bull and cigarettes. I'm going to probably try and find a girl here that'll talk to me in the condition that I'm in, and life will be right as rain. And very, very quickly, that old misery and everything like that started creeping back in. And thank God that I was just around some good people, Bill being one of them, who kind of pushed me in the right direction. So again, one of the greatest things that I ever hear Bill say, and some that I always love, is that water seeks its own level, right? So get around people that seem like they're going somewhere and know some things about themselves, and what we say, armed with the facts about each other, so that you can learn the facts about yourself.
Yeah. Very well said.
Thanks, Greg. That was great.
Eagles fan.
Who's that? Bill?
Where are the cats?
The cats are alive. They are. They're
Thank
alive.
goodness.
They're in the living room. They're fine.
Enlighten us, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I don't know. I listening to you guys talk and can definitely identify and relate with almost all of it. I was specifically thinking about all my rehab stints. Man, there were a couple for me. There was a couple rehab stints that were completely against my will, and there nothing was going to change, which is fine. That's what happens when you have a few run-ins with the law too, and I did that as a juvenile. But and listening to Greg, essentially talk about using against his will, and I was trying to think about when that switched for me, truly. Because I was a full-blown drug addict for a couple of years. I think actually, just like Greg said, 13 and 14 years old, I started dabbling in some, like Greg just said, light drugs, like the way you put that. Got into the good stuff. Had 15, approaching 16. And I was just a typical New Jersey teen drug addict. Shithead. And which obviously worried a lot of people. I feel like we see people that that have other addictions, like maybe some of the lighter drugs and stuff at that age, and it's almost I don't know how to put it. It's easier to hide how bad it is at a certain point, I think, anyway. And it was for me, because once I got into the hard stuff, that's when people were like, yo, that's not good. and I remember kind of wearing it as a badge of honor there for a little bit. And the people, my peers in high school, were like, bro, you're crazy for that. And I'm like, what? It's very normal to me. But yeah, I think by my point is by the third rehab, I started to kind of want a different way. But the thing is, one thing's not enough, there had to be some sort of internal switch. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's a way truly that anybody, at least in my experience, I don't think I even did that for myself. I truly think that it was a divine intervention thing that happened for when I finally got sober once and for all. But, because going to my third rehab, I felt like I wanted it as much as I could ever want it, because I was tired of getting nabbed by probation. I was tired of the probation officer showing up at the door and threatening to take away my freedom again. That, it started getting old, but, nothing changed until all the nevers happened. We hear that a lot, around the community. All the nevers will come true. All the, the yets and whatever, had to be the very stereotypical, live in my car for a few months, and then the police impounded that because I wasn't paying my insurance or registration, to anybody's surprise, and they took my damn clothes hamper with it. But yeah, all that stuff had to happen for me. few people, I'm not saying never, but definitely not never actually, because everybody's like, bottom will look different, but like, I will say that nobody comes in on a winning streak. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people walking into recovery with things, and that's okay, but like, just, man, to your guys' point, and I'm gonna shut up, but like, to your guys' point, like, the people that say enough's enough, don't call me anymore, thank you. Like, some of my friends that I thought were just as bad as me didn't want to talk to me. Like, that was, in hindsight, such a blessing. I had to be abandoned. To the mom that's letting her son stay on the couch still, like,
Kick his
think
ass
twice.
out.
Yeah, think twice about that. Like, do you, like, I know you want to help your kid, but like, do you want your kid dead on the couch? Like, that's it. It's, I don't know. Like, there's no handbook, I don't think, for like how to, well, maybe there is, but how to deal with a relative or a loved one that's in addiction. Like, that's tough. And like, I'm the addict, so like, I won't even speculate on that stuff. But in my experience, everybody slammed the door in my face.
Kick him out.
In a not so loving way, really. But man, I have good relationships with just about all of them today.
Yeah.
And that's good stuff. So
Thank you, Corey. Bill, if there was one more person willing to give me $20 more, I probably wouldn't have got sober, right?
That's right.
for that.
Thank you, guys. I know your stories very well. It's always good to hear them. I'm hoping that some of the listeners can gain some insight and some experience and all that stuff from it as well. I have never been to a rehab. I've never been to a detox. I did get shipped off to a foreign country to go to a behavioral modification school for youth at risk. That's a story for another time.
Undisclosed location.
Yeah, definitely an undisclosed location. I have been Baker acted. I have been hospitalized. I have been incarcerated about half a dozen times, never for any long amounts of time, but I think 8 days was the longest I ever did. A few weekends, few days, 3 days, 5 days, etc. I can remember the day that my mother told me that she had made peace with God that I could die any day and that was okay. And I'm a father. I have 2 girls. I'm not even no effing way. So for her to be at that place is pretty unbelievable. So my dad always let me back in the house. My parents are split up, by the way. They're still good friends though. And they've both been a part of my life. My dad would always let me back in the house. He would kick me out and I'd come crawling back. My mom put a trespass warrant against me. Don't step foot on my property. I'll call the police if I have to. I was not positive that I even wanted to stop drinking and getting high for good. I just knew that I needed the issues. I knew all personal hygiene had gone out the window. I was unemployable. I was just so miserable in my addiction towards the end there that it wasn't even funny. I was on the outskirts of a relationship with a woman who just I don't even want to shout her out because she might be listening and I don't want to offend her or anything like that. Although now I just said that, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But it was just terrible. It was a terrible setup I had going, and there was absolutely no hope for it, no life whatsoever. And my parents entered a fellowship to help the families and friends of us alcoholics and drug addicts. And the people, one lady specifically, helped my parents. And by way of her, I ended up in a halfway house in an undisclosed location. And my journey in sobriety began almost 13 years ago now at that halfway house. And it, for me, was a surrender. I've had multiple surrenders. And for anyone who's just getting into recovery, it's not just one surrender. It's not just I make a decision to get sober and then I'm sober. Because as has been already said by my compadres here, my most desperate, honest desire to stop couldn't keep me stopped. I always started again, right? Alcoholism, drug addiction is not the crazy, insane, incredibly tragic, and stupid things we do when we're drunk. Many non-alcoholics get drunk, have a few too many, act a fool. It is when I am completely stark raving sober, and I desperately do not want to drink again, but I can't not drink, right? That is true powerlessness, and that is what I was feeling. And I had a surrender that got me to the halfway house I went to. I had another surrender a few weeks later that I was going to I was intrigued and interested in what you people in this recovery community had to offer. I was going to pay some attention. I was going to try to meet some people. And then I had multiple surrenders as the years, the days, weeks, and months went on. And I think that the beauty of the freedom that I have today is that I just keep surrendering. I keep surrendering to my higher power. Under his umbrella, under God's umbrella, is my sobriety, is my family, is my job, is my friend, like all of it. I don't have any of it unless I have that relationship, which, gets into more things, but it was that surrender to, I don't have the answer. Possibly this fellowship of mentoring does, or at least they know where to lead me in the direction that I can take it down. So that's all I got. I can continue, as you guys know, I can go on and on with that. We're pretty much done for the night, guys. Any parting thoughts from anyone on this topic or any of the other things we touched on? Anything you forgot to say or you want to clarify?
I was going to say, just as always, for any of those listeners that might have questions, comments, want to talk to us, take issue with anything we've said in the podcast, but certainly stuff when it comes to recovery, hit us up. We got the email, the socials. You can DM us, any of that kind of stuff. We want to hear from you. And we look forward to it, whether we talk about you and give you a shout out on the show, or whether we're, just talking on the side, and, we look forward to it.
Yeah, I love all you men, and I want to say that. And if you're listening and you're new to this, we do have a certain amount of levity, meaning joking about serious things. But I would go into any war with these men right here. And I will also say that last week, I didn't mention this earlier, but I said Corleones instead of cojones, which is hilarious. Corleones, like the Godfather. I don't know what was going on there, but that was funny, man. So that's the new word for cojones, is Corleones.
Yeah. I think you might have messed something else up tonight too early on. It caught me off guard. We're gonna have to listen. That might be it. That might be just an ongoing thing that we might have to make a bit. Thank you, everybody. This has been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal. So with that, shout out to our listeners. Thank you for your support. Please remember to like, follow, and smash that button. Yes, Corey, smash it. Share us on all socials at Trudge Report Pod. All social media platforms at Trudge Report Pod. Email us, trudgereportpod@yahoo.com. That's trudgereportpod@yahoo.com. Send mailbag requests for topics, questions, comments, any of those handles. Remember, as Greg said, we are all here if anyone wants to talk about recovery and our experiences, or if you are struggling with some form of addiction. We are here. There is hope. There are people who understand and can lead you in the right direction. Thank you again, as always, to our wonderful producer and editor, Miss Janine Stella at Stella Mix Podcast Management. We say to you, good night, God bless, and we will see you next week. Cheers, everybody.